Welcome back. In this episode, we'll be going through an extremely pivotal offseason. You'll recall last year we got very close. We got very close to tasting the glory of both a winning season and a playoff berth. We got sort of unlucky with injuries. We even got a little unlucky with the Pythag and the run differential. You can't help but feel that we are getting very close, and we need one more good offseason to push us over the finish line. Our season score for the year was 492. That is about average. Average is going to be around 500, with 1,000 being around the top end and 0 being the worst you can possibly do. This is an average score. Foolish. One tip people like to give, particularly for this year's edition of the game, is to check out the waiver wire right as the offseason starts, because there are some juicy names on the waiver wire. And that is the case here. And we are, keep in mind, I guess 8 or 9 years into this sim. I guess about 8 years into this simulation. And, things have started to break down because this game has done a generally good job of keeping those great names off the waiver wire. But here is Frank Arellano. And look, he's got a lot of developing left to do, but potentially this guy is an amazing third baseman. Look at his defensive ratings. Look at the 70 contact and 70 gap power potential. He's the number 21 prospect in Major League Baseball. He was signed for $4.7 million in 2026. He should not be on the waiver wire, is my point. He should not be on the waiver wire is what I'm saying. Same with Ed Contreras, who is just a pretty solid-looking big leaguer to me. I'm not going to be scooping those guys up. I think it's sort of, against the competitive spirit of this save, but that is an option. If you are trying to get better, if you're trying to make your team better, you could try to scoop these guys up, and obviously they would contribute, maybe not right away for Arellano's case, but he would contribute eventually. Here's our message from owner John Fisher in terms of his team record expectation we got there. He wanted us to play around 500 ball, and I guess 79 wins got it done. He still wants us to acquire an MVP. I don't know if that's going to happen. Increased attendance, we are very close to meeting his goal. He wants us to average 21,000 fans per home game. We are at just over 20,000, so hopefully we can get it this year. The deadline for that has not run out yet, and we have built our farm. Right now, we have the 4th-ranked farm system in Major League Baseball, and now that that game has snapshotted that, we're going to get credit for that goal. So things are looking pretty good in John Fisher land, I would say. And he has given us a budget of $130 million, which is, I think, the highest budget we have had throughout this save. Here's how I'm going to set up the player development lab. The two most interesting ones are Termarr Johnson's strength and conditioning. We haven't tried that yet, but he has injury prone, is fragile. You recall he missed some time this year. We have him for the long term, so we don't want him to miss any more games. Hopefully we can make him less injury prone through strength and conditioning. And Kevin Skeet, we're trying to increase his velocity. That would be vis-a-vis his stuff. His stuff is the thing that has not developed all the way. The movement and control are either fully developed or close to fully developed, but he's going to need to see that stuff come up, I think, if he wants to, for example, start the season in the rotation next year. Chris Baker and Chris Greer, the two Chris's, were trying to, fill out the rest of their power potential. And then we have a couple other guys who I think might contribute to us, or for us later on in 2032. Jared Forrest, the catcher, we're going to work on his plate discipline, as well as Daniel Arana, the shortstop. One of the more important decisions of the offseason is the Ezequiel Tovar team option. This is what his contract looks like. It is a team option for 2032, his age 30 season, for $20 million. That is a lot of money for us. We have never paid $20 million for a player, and he came back, played half a season for us, was pretty good. He had a pretty good half a season for us, but some of the ratings have come down. The eye is now a 45. It used to be a 50. He is fragile. Even I think the defensive ratings are down just a smidge from, when we got him a year ago. However, I will be accepting this. I will execute this option. We will have Tovar. And that's because I think we're going to need some help in the middle infield, because I have plans to move around Termarr Johnson. Here's how we're going to do arbitration. I guess the big non-tenders are Jacob Lopez, who has a $5 million ARB estimate. Perfectly fine season for us last year. He's always kind of been perfectly fine for us. A 3.37 ERA as a reliever for us since we grabbed him off waivers. That is a very good record for him. But unfortunately, I just don't think we're in a position to pay $5 million for any reliever that's not named, Ronan Kopp, for example. Jade Melendez is the other big one. This is a guy, I would just like to bring him back, but I think the $5.5 million ARB estimate is a little bit steep. We've got Jared Forrest down there in AAA. He's hopefully ready to take over catching duties at some point in 2032 anyways, which would mean Melendez is basically just a backup. I would be happy to have him as a backup. His expectation is starting lineup, but we'll see if that expectation changes if he hits free agency. But yeah, hopefully we can bring him back, or an equivalent player, because I really like Jade Melendez, but if this is the last we see of him, here are his final stats. 6.5 WAR for us after being plucked straight out of indie ball. Ethan Petrie and Tyler Pitzer are two guys we're going to have to go to arbitration with. They both have high financial ambition, so they are harder to negotiate with on these fronts. Cuvée, we have an offer for him. Uyolo, we have an offer for him. We'll also be non-tendering Jared Spencer because, once again, I don't want to just have like an all-ARB bullpen necessarily, because I just think paying, $3 or $4 million for each one of these guys, that's kind of death by, 1,000 paper cuts in terms of our budget. I've got a couple trades for us cooked up in this arbitration stage, and I think if we can make the budget work, after these trades, we will have a playoff caliber roster. I really believe that. Here's what I'm talking about. So here's the first trade I've come up with, and it is a big one. We're going to be trading away Luis Castellanos. Why would I trade away Luis Castellanos, you may ask? He's the number 58th ranked prospect. He's the guy who we signed back in 2026. We've been tracking his progress so closely. He made it up to high A. He's probably going to start the season double A. Why would you do it? 35 avoid case potential. We have talked about this throughout the series, even with the 70 power potential, even with the power that he has. And he has hit for power in the minor leagues, as you can see. That 35 avoid Ks is going to hurt him a lot. And even though he's a great defender at catcher, I'm not sure if it makes the expectations worth it. I think we can trade him and get a better player. We're also going to be trading Melendez, which hurts for me because I really just kind of wanted to non-tender him and then bring him back, but I don't really know if that was ever going to be in the cards. He's been such a fun pickup for us. We're going to be trading Shimizu as well in this deal. This is a guy who makes perfect sense to trade. He's got 1 year left. It's his final ARB year. That contract he had with the Angels when we traded for him was 3 years, and then he had his ARB year after that. So they're basically just buying out ARB years in his case. Really good for us in 2029 and 2030. I was perfectly fine with those performances. 2031, 9 starts, gets hurt, fragile, 35, obvious trade candidate for us, especially team in our position. Jake Bell, our third rounder in 2028. He's fine. I mean, he looks fine. I don't know. He's not a needle mover for me in this organization. I'm fine letting him go. Here's who we're going to get in return. And I suppose the big name here is Ethan Holiday. Ethan Holiday, who went to college in this simulation, went to Oklahoma State, and then was drafted first overall. Here's what it is. He was drafted first overall by the Pirates in 25, failed to sign, and then he goes to Oklahoma State and then gets drafted still in the first round by the Mariners. He is the number 36th ranked prospect, so you can consider this sort of a Castellanos for Holiday swap. Played in the big leagues last year, terrible. -1 more, terrible, terrible, terrible. But I think we just have to trust in the prospect ranking. I think we have to trust in what our scout is telling us about Ethan Holiday. The fact that he has the infield range and infield arm to play all over the infield is a great thing. That makes him versatile, and I just have to have faith that he will develop and do much better in his second year in the big leagues. We'll also be receiving David Rivera, who's a reliever I'm very excited about. We're definitely trying to add to our bullpen. Our bullpen was our biggest weakness, and David Rivera is going to help us. He had a 2.59 ERA for Seattle last year, and arguably their best reliever, Chris Pereira, who, look at his ERA as a Mariner, and he is entering arbitration, so he is going to get paid off of that. But these are two great relievers. I think they could be, high leverage, those stopper role guys alongside Chase Lee, and all of a sudden I think we've got one of the better bullpens in the league after this trade. Nick Krall doesn't like it. He wants us to reject this trade offer, but it's going to free us up some salary. We're going to get Ethan Holiday, a very high caliber player, and we're going to get two great relievers, and we're going to make this trade. So Brent Renfroe, a pitcher for the Miami Marlins, is someone who I tried to trade for last year. I said, oh, look, here's a guy who only threw 60 innings last year, but is clearly due a breakout. You can see he's got great ratings across the board. I think even better than the last time when I tried to trade for him a year ago. He ends up having a breakout season in 2031, 192 innings pitched, 4 WAR, 3.28 ERA. He was great, to say the least. And so when I looked at him this year, I thought to myself, well, we probably don't have anything to offer that would interest them, just considering Brent Renfroe is very good and young and cost controlled. So I can click the Make This Work Now button, and if there's any player in the organization who the Miami Marlins would be willing to swap 1-for-1, it'll show me. And a lot of times when I look at good players, I click that button and nobody shows up, not a single player in the organization. When I clicked it, this is what I saw. Eric Ackerman. And I was shocked by that because Eric Ackerman, I like him. He's a good bench player who I drafted in the 4th round of 2027, and I already traded him away once to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then he came back to us at the trade deadline. And I was shocked by that because I don't really think that is a fair trade. And obviously Nick Krall is absolutely loving it. So Here's what I'm going to do. I am going to do this trade because I want Brett Renfroe, and I've lost 8 seasons in a row. So I'm not above necessarily making a trade I don't feel is totally fair. However, I will throw in someone else. I will throw in Ethan Petrie, who has excellent ratings still. I mean, this 55 infield range, 60 infield arm, that is a solid third baseman defensively, I think. 60 power, 65 eye, that is walks, that is, getting on base, that is power. I think he is a good player. I think he'll be a good player for them. 2 more years left of service time. The torn ACL sucked, but I do think maybe the Marlins can at least get something from it. Nick Krall still likes the trade. He says do it. That's fine. I'm also going to make Miami throw in just for sort of organizational sense, and also, we missed this guy. We want him back. Where is he? Terrence Keel. I want Terrence Keel. Is he on their AAA? Yes, he is. Terrence Keel was someone who we drafted way back in 2024, so that was our first draft, and not a major league caliber hitter, but 75 outfield range. So I want him in my AAA system. Nick Krall says only a fool would reject this offer. We're going to make this trade. We're going to send away Petrie and Ackerman, a couple of infielders, to get Brett Renfroe, and I think that's going to give us just an absolutely monster rotation. So here's what our new arbitration screen looks like. We're going to make offers to Renfroe and Pereira, who we just traded for. Those guys are first-year ARB eligible. Ullola and Cuvée were also making offers for in an attempt to skip arbitration. Dylan Watts we're going to probably go to arbitration with. I think he has... no, he doesn't have high financial ambition, but Pitzer does, so we'll need to go to an ARB battle with him. But yeah, that's how we're going to set it up. Seth Johnson becomes a free agent. No interest in bringing him back. I mean, I think he did a fine job with us, both stints really. He did a perfectly fine job with us, but no need to bring him back. Adam Macko, your Linsanity run will be remembered. I hope you go get paid a lot of money elsewhere. Spencer Arrighetti, thank you for your service as well. It is award season. We will start with your Gold Glove Award winners. Jacob Cozart continues to rack them up for Tampa Bay. The left side of the Yankees infield grab a couple with Gabriel Arias and Carson Williams, their new signing. Carson Williams, an excellent first year in pinstripes. Brady Harris of the Tigers, who we covet. We wish we had Brady Harris of the Tigers, but Chris Baker's pretty good consolation. We'll win one as well. In the National League, here's what it looks like. Drew Romo continues to rack them up at catcher. The Phillies have a couple in Yatsak and Kingston. And also Jordan Walker grabs one. That is his second career Gold Glove award. He also grabbed one in 2030. So the defense coming along for him. He's 29 years old in this sim. Here are his career stats so far. Looking like a great player. Our bullpen was a weakness for us last year, so it's good to see David Rivera get some down-ballot votes for AL Reliever of the Year for the season he had with Seattle. Mason Miller also gets one as well for the Texas Rangers. But in the American League, it is Woo Suk Go and Clay Holmes basically splitting this award. Woo Suk Go barely wins it, but they get all the first-place votes, and they are both Boston Red Sox. Those guys won the World Series for a reason. In the National League, it's going to be Nick Robertson, who is 33 years old. It's just an excellent season for the Philadelphia Phillies. His first year pitching for that team. Abner Uribe is your runner-up, the closer for the Braves. Here are your Silver Slugger winners for the American League. We wanted Samuel Basallo. He ended up going to the Red Sox in free agency last year, and he's going to grab a Silver Slugger at catcher. Astros have a couple. This guy, Robbie Strelka, is turning into an absolute monster in this save as well. That was his second season in the big leagues, first full season. He looks like a terrific player for years to come, complimenting Jackson Holiday as well. The Rangers have a couple outfielders grabbing them. That's Corbin Carroll and Wyatt Langford with Brady Harris over there in center. And I will also shout out Ellie De La Cruz because in the National League, it's O'Neal Cruz grabbing one at third base. He ends up going to the Dodgers in free agency last year, which is the team that he originally signed with when he turned pro. Esteban Miraz is a guy who has won quite a few of these, 2 of these actually, and then 2 Gold Gloves. He looks like a great player for the Cardinals. He's getting old, though. He's one of those fictional Cuban players, one of the first free agents that this game generated. Jake Kingston wins one for the Phillies. That guy looks like a monster. And Jet Williams to complete their middle infield. That was his first year with the Phillies. And Jordan Walker grabs one. The AL Rookie of the Year is Yoon Ki Yao of the Texas Rangers. I talked about this guy. I talked about avoiding wanting to sign this guy because of the 30 avoid Ks, and he did strike out a lot, but he did also hit 41 home runs for the Texas Rangers. In the National League, it is Jamie Frakes. This is another guy I've been trying to trade for. I will say this about the Marlins in this save. They just generate so much young talent. I don't know if they've drafted well, they've developed well, but they have generated so many great young players. I'm excited for them. The AL Manager of the Year is Dong Wook Song of the Tigers. I believe that is his third in the row. In the National League, it is Cliff Brumbaugh. That's his second in the row. He's the manager of the Milwaukee Brewers. Both teams won 100 games. Your AL Cy Young Award winner is Ricky Tiedemann. He grabs 22 of the 31st place votes, with Logan Allen the runner-up. Tyler Pitzer finishes 6th. I wonder if he could have finished higher than that if he was able to make his last couple starts of the season, because he did grab the ERA crown. We're excited to have him. In the National League, it is Jesus Luzardo, just fending off the Cardinals' right-handed pitcher Chase Shores. Here's what Chase Shores looks like. A great breakout season for him. A lot of strikeouts, 206 strikeouts for him. Here's Jesus Luzardo with the Brewers. Just a workhorse, 200 innings plus in the last 3 seasons, and this year he grabs himself his first Cy Young Award. Here's what his contract looks like. He is 34 years old. And your AL MVP unanimously is Jackson Holliday, who had just an absolute monster season for the Houston Astros. That was his 2nd year with them after leaving the Baltimore Orioles. Here's what his contract looks like. Honestly, a steal. Brady Harris is the runner-up. In the National League, it is going to be Jake Kingston, who was the Rookie of the Year of the National League a year ago. This guy is an absolute monster. Did it with only 136 games played. He had to fend off Michael Harris, who also got first place votes, as well as CJ Sampson. Honestly, if it were me, I would have given it to the two-way stud, CJ Sampson, but totally understandable. Jake Kingston, a great player in this save. Here are the results from the 4 players we went to salary arbitration hearings with. We lost all of them, so that is some extra cash that we will not have in our budget this year. And I think just working the budget is going to be the tricky part of the rest of this offseason. I think we have the roster. It's just how do we keep the roster together without going over budget? And with that, free agency can begin. The best international free agent entering the market, keep in mind these players are CPU generated, is Hao Zi out of Taiwan. By far, this guy looks like an absolutely monstrous closer. He's only 25 years old, too. I went and looked at what he wanted. That is a fair amount. That's more than I would personally pay for a reliever, but someone is going to be very happy that they signed Hao Zi. In terms of the rest of the players entering the free agency market, there are some big names. DL Hall is one of them. I don't think we'll bring him back. He had a perfectly fine final season, though, with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Roman Anthony and Marcelo Mayer, 2 pieces of the Red Sox position player core, the team that just won the World Series, are there. Yohan Duran, Emmanuel Clase, and Shane Baz are sort of the big arms coming out. And then Charlie Condon was the World Series MVP, so he'll be one to watch as well. This year's Hall of Fame ballot is headlined by Clayton Kershaw, who really didn't do much after 2023 in this simulation anyway, so, go to his baseball reference page right now. What you see is what you get. He's a Hall of Famer. And you know what? As long as Sean Doolittle keeps sticking around and getting 5% of the vote, I'm going to vote for him. And for those of you who are curious, here's what the Hall of Fame classes have looked like during this simulation. I have whipped up a third trade for us. It's not going to be nearly as consequential as the first 2. We're going to trade back for Connor Wong. I took a look at the options as far as catchers and free agency, and with Jaden Melendez gone from the team, we need a captain. And Connor Wong, he has that ability to be a captain. He will sort of serve as a backup catcher for us. Now you would think, oh yeah, platoon with Matthew Wood, he bats left-handed. I'm actually going to rule in favor of Carter Jensen in this case, another left-handed hitting catcher. So we are going to trade away Wood. We're also going to trade away David Mata, who is probably the best prospect available in this deal. If you look at him, you can see if he develops, he could be like, a league average catcher, but he's only 18. We signed him for $1.5 million a couple years ago. Ramiro Regalado is a scouting discovery reliever. Santiago Eldred was our 2029 6th rounder. It doesn't look that amazing to me. I'm okay letting him go. And Mike Bevy, who's been, you'll recall, he was absolutely on fire in the minors earlier in real life. His only real skill is not striking out. So I'm fine with trading him. He was a guy we had on a minor league deal in AAA. He hit well in AAA, really well, in fact. But I don't really need him in the majors necessarily, if that makes sense, because I think his only real skill is not striking out despite just a insane run for 29 games in AAA, and also some good numbers in AA. In return, we get Wong, we get Junior Arias, who's I like the platoon potential here, like maybe he factors in the outfield at some point. A right fielder for sure, not a center fielder as he's listed. We'll get more catching depth too in the form of Eric Lekowski, just to have another guy probably on the 40-man eventually. And then Braylon Doughty is a 40-man pitcher. I don't like the 45 home run allowed, but he does have potential to grow that to 50. And he's probably like, SP 7 or 8 on the depth chart, and maybe he helps us out in the bullpen because you can see as a reliever, the fastball and the curveball combo is pretty nasty. So I think he can help us out one way or another. We are going to make this trade, and it's basically just a swap of depth, and we're just going to, help give this team a better shape overall. December 9th, we don't have that much money in the budget for the big free agents, so we're not kind of flirting with the idea like we did flirt with the idea of signing Ellie De La Cruz or Samuel Basayo. That's not that kind of off-season for us. Draft lottery results have been announced at the winter meetings. We will not be in the lottery. That's okay. We played closer to 500 last year anyways. It'll be the Baltimore Orioles who will pick first. In this game, teams will periodically reach out to you with trade propositions of their own. It's generally best to ignore them, but I did have to laugh at this one because the Pittsburgh Pirates are willing to offer us Juan Soto. Not the Juan Soto you know, but still, it's Juan Soto. December also means it is time for the Rule 5 draft. I don't necessarily anticipate us making a selection this year, but if we do, it'll probably be a reliever. We will pick 12th. Here's what the draft looks like so far. The first selection was made by the Pirates. They grabbed this utility infielder from the Cubs. Looks like he'd be pretty good given the defensive ratings. You know what? I'll make a selection just for fun. Alex Clemmie only has a 45 home run allowed right now, which isn't great. I really would avoid any pitcher who has below a 50 in that particular stat. But yeah, he's got some good pitches, particularly his curveball, which is a 75. He's got good stuff. He started in AAA last year, although did not do very well. His ERA was nearly 7. Why not? I'll make the selection. I don't anticipate him, making the final 26-man roster, but we might as well do something. And there's the rest of the draft. The Pittsburgh Pirates made 5 selections in this one. We will continue on with the rest of the offseason. So we've talked a lot about the budget this offseason, and there's a good reason why. We have the 29th highest budget in the league. Some poor soul out there has to deal with a lower budget than us, the lowly Oakland A's, but the 26th highest payroll. Our payroll is high relative to our budget. If I set our scouting budget and our development budget how I like it, how I had it in 2031, mind you, this is still, well lower than it could be. We have $1 million available. And we still have to sign international amateur free agents, which that's another, 5 or 6 million right there. So I'm going to make the decision. We have to clear out some salary. And the way we're going to do that, unfortunately, is by trading Josh Mears. He has been maybe the most beloved player in this series. He has hit over 200 home runs for us in an Oakland A's uniform, been worth 13 WAR, but also just 100 OPS plus because look at these strikeout totals. This is what Josh Mears does. And honestly, apart from an excellent 2029, he's always been a little bit disappointing. The thing that kind of saves him is the fact that he plays really good defense. In fact, he won a Gold Glove Award in 2028 at right field. But he's 30 now. Here is the rest of his contract. He has $7.2 million this year and then a team option for 2033 as well. And I think we just kind of have to get a younger outfielder. And it's unfortunate, really. This is going to be the end of the Josh Mears era. If we had held on to Josh Mears, I would tell you this team was in an excellent place, but having to trade him, that's going to definitely shake things up. I think the pitching is going to be great. I think we're going to have a great pitching team this year. I don't really have doubts about that. It's the hitting, it's the offense. That is what we would potentially struggle with. And in trading Josh Mears, that's going to open up a lot of questions about the outfield in general because Chris Baker's our center fielder. He's great. Chris Baker's a great player, but the corners, we didn't really get much from Dave Sochi at all last year. We didn't get anything from Andrew Wiggins at all last year. Those guys were replacement level or worse. We have made some acquisitions to help. Jeremy Okoro is going to be one of those. More on him in a second, but you'll recall we added a outfielder in the previous trade, the Connor Wong trade, Junior Arias. I really like Junior Arias. Look at the platoon potential with him facing left-handed pitching. These numbers, at least ratings-wise, are Josh Mears-esque, at least against the lefties. But yeah, it's going to be tough. We're going to need, there's 4 corner outfield guys, and we're really going to need 2 of them to be good, I would say, if we're going to, really make a run at a playoff spot this year. So trading Mears stinks. We'll also trade away Frank Soto, who's just a scouting discovery. It doesn't look like too much to me. In return, we will get Jeremy Okoro. Jeremy Okoro is a 97th ranked prospect according to OSA. He has some big league service time. It was not good service time, and this is sort of what we ran into with Ethan Holiday as well, as trading for these guys who haven't done so great. But one emphasis for me lately has been trading for good stats, and these guys have not generally put up good stats. So the hope is that the ratings come through. The hope is that, quite frankly, the power develops from a 45 to a 60, like my head scout thinks it will. Defensive ratings-wise, more of a left fielder than a right fielder. I think Mears is probably the superior defender, but what we get is someone who is, young and cost controlled, has less than a year of service time. His salary is going to be $740,000. That's about a tenth of what we're paying Josh Mears, and then I'll clear up the money we need to make international amateur signings. We'll also get Devin Hicks. I wouldn't overlook this one necessarily because Devin Hicks, he has that captaincy, he has that framing. This is the type of guy that would be sort of your prototypical backup OOTP catcher, and that's good. That has a value to it. We had to seek out Connor Wong to do that, so maybe, Connor Wong does it this year and Devin Hicks does it for us in the future, so I would not overlook that trade for Devin Hicks either. This is the trade we're going to make. Nick Krall says doesn't really float my boat, and the fans aren't going to like it either. And right on cue, the fan interest has decreased noticeably. It is January 15th. It is time to make some international free agent signings. But first, an update on some of the top free agents. Unlike the last couple seasons, we never even flirted with the idea of signing these guys. Our money is already spent. Walker Jenkins is going to go to the Blue Jays. Riley Green, Yankees. Riley Green, I think, had an opt-out. He had 3 pretty good years in San Francisco, and then I'm guessing there was an opt-out. Avert your eyes, Red Sox fans. Marcelo Meyer is going to the Yankees. That is a $200 million deal. Bo Naylor to the Mets. He was the best catcher available by far. Brock Wilken, this guy who was very good from Milwaukee, a big power hitter, he's going to go to Boston, so a little consolation there for Boston. Roman Anthony, sorry Boston fans once again, going to the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think this is the biggest contract handed out this offseason, $245 million. DL Hall, this one shocked me. DL Hall got like a $100 million contract from the Astros, and I was shocked by it. He had a fine 2031 with Pittsburgh, I guess, but I mean, you just look at this guy. The ratings are great. The ratings are incredible. I could never really figure out why the ratings never corresponded with the run prevention we're looking for, because this is a guy with a career 4.50 ERA, 96 ERA plus, and yet 5-year deal, $100 million. And he's 33. He's not young either. Connor Phillips, a former Cy Young winner in this save, is going to go to the Cubs. And Spencer Strider to the White Sox on another 2-year deal. And Jacob Lopez goes to the Yankees, so bye-bye Jacob Lopez. When I selected the 10 players I was going to scout and to invite to these practices, I picked guys with sort of a variety of demand and stuff like that so we can mix and match. I don't necessarily think this is going to be one of those off seasons where we put all our budget into one player. We'll see, though. The top guys are Darwin Abreu, a pitcher. Honestly, if there was a guy we were going to put it in, it might be this guy. The only thing that gives me any sort of doubt is that 3-pitch mix. I like a guy with 4 or 5 pitches. Nelson Leal, this guy looks pretty great, too. Wish he had more to offer defensively. I think he probably projects more as a first baseman than an outfielder. And then David Morrell, this guy's very clearly a third baseman to me. I'd be happy to get any of these 3. I've gone ahead and offered a couple of contracts. One is to David Morrell, who is that third baseman we talked about, and then Alejandro Ambriz is a pitcher. I think he's the second best pitcher in the class, but I do like his pitch mix more. And wow, no drama, no back and forth, no bidding war, no nothing. We get both of them. I'm ecstatic about this class. I think this is one of the best classes we have had so far. We get David Morrell. Look at this guy. He looks phenomenal if he develops high work ethic as well. And I'm excited about Ambriz too. Man, this is a great class. This is a great day. With the trade of Josh Mears, I knew it had to be done. I had to extend Chris Baker, our guy, our 11th overall pick back in 2027. Here's the extension we're offering him. He'll still be on league minimum this year in 2032, but for that and beyond, we have these years. And these last 2, these team options, represent his potential free agent years that we have bought out. I like having those higher value team options at the end of the deal. Otherwise, these are just buying out ARB years, and honestly, these are cheaper than we probably would have paid him in ARB because he's just coming off like a 5-win season. So that was a no-brainer extension. Good to get Chris Baker long-term. It's February 2nd. We have finished up our IFA class with a couple smaller signings, one of which is Jesus Arizaga, who is a big power and big not so much else outfielder prospect, and then Juan Guerrero, a reliever prospect. Coming into spring training 2032, this is the team with the highest expectations so far. I really think this is it. I really think this is the team that can go above 500. I think this is the team that can find their way into the playoffs. I've made a bunch of moves this past offseason with depth in mind, and we were challenged for depth last season when we had so many injuries, so many untimely injuries, and I found myself really having to improvise. I don't want to improvise this year. I've made a lot of different contingency plans for what if this player doesn't work out, then I'll do this player, etc., etc. The one player I didn't have a contingency plan for, honestly, was Chris Baker. That's why I've gone ahead and invited Trent Grisham to spring training, and hopefully he'll stick around with us because I don't anticipate he will make the roster, but hopefully doesn't opt out because just in case, I'm like, all right, Trent Grisham, Vance Honeycutt, platoon. I've thought about all that stuff and more. So that's kind of what we're doing going into this here spring training. I know in terms of the offense, I'm probably going to have to mix and match a lot this season, try to find the hot hand basically, because I think there's a lot of different combinations, a lot of different positions these guys can play, but I'm going to have to find the lineups that work for me, and that's going to be a work in progress. So even if these guys don't make the final 26-man roster, it's definitely going to be a work in progress. We have a lot of flexibility as far as this roster goes. The pitching's a little more straightforward. The pitching I think is going to be really good, but we do have more pitching depth than in previous years as well, so I'm excited about that. We're going to go through spring training, cross our fingers for no major injuries, and get down to the final 26-man roster for 2032. March 1st, we have gotten back our results from the Player Development Lab, and we generally go after lofty goals when we use the Player Development Lab, and so it's not a surprise that we only got success from 2 out of our 6 attempts to develop these players, but we got huge news here on Chris Greer. Generate Bat Speed program concluded. Outstanding. This is going to increase his power, and look what his power has become. He's now a 65 with a 70 potential on the 20 to 80 scale. I am so excited about this. This is a huge game changer for us. I was afraid at some points in Chris Greer's development that he was going to go the way of Devin Taylor. He did not. The 6th overall pick in the 2026 draft, a high schooler, has really developed quite nicely, and I think he's going to factor into this club for the future. A huge bat to complement Daniel Cuvée. Jared Force was also successful at increasing his plate discipline. That's akin to the eye. His eye is now a 60 with a 70 potential. That's also great news. I think it gets him to the big leagues sooner. I don't think he's going to necessarily start as the catcher on opening day, but he is going to get to the big leagues very, very soon. This is another first-round draft pick for us, a great development, outcome for us. And then Termarr Johnson is a guy I do want to talk about, because Termarr Johnson, we tried to improve his strength and conditioning. It didn't work. And then if you go and look at him, his injury proneness is wrecked, and we've got him under a really long-term deal. So I'm going to try to find ways to move Termarr Johnson around. Maybe it's going to be some DH days. Maybe it's going to be some corner outfield days. I don't know. I don't think he's going to play actually that much second base this year in my plans. But Termarr Johnson is a guy we are worried about with this injury proneness. We're going to at least play out this season because we definitely have high expectations, and we're going to need him to get on base for us. But I don't know about the long term here for Termarr Johnson. We may have to trade him after this season. Luckily, his contract is only for about $13 million AAV, so I think we would be able to move him off that contract if need be. We do have a spring training injury. That's going to be Steve Forrestal, who has a torn muscle in his back. That is a 4-month injury. He was simply reliever depth. I don't think he was ever going to break camp with his club, but that is some reliever depth we will be missing going into the season. Termarr Johnson, who we talked about, has a moderate day-to-day injury as well, and I know the CPU is going to be like, let's play him and let's get him more hurt, so I'm just going to put him on the injured list for the 10-day IL. Just don't use him. Get him healthy. Dave Sochi, same thing. He has a strained forearm. That is another day-to-day moderate injury for 4 weeks, so that hurts, but Dave Sochi, same thing. Injured list for now. It is the day before opening day. We will have to pare down to our final 26-man roster. We'll have to do that without Dave Sochi, who still has 5 more days on the injured list, but I believe he'll actually be healthy to play on opening day for us, which is not until April 2nd. So our final 26-man roster will come with an asterisk because Dave Sochi will probably be in the lineup come April 2nd. So here's how we will align ourselves in 2032. For now, I think there are a lot of permutations with how this team could turn out. I'm anticipating some injuries this year. I'm worried about Termarr Johnson because he has that wrecked injury proneness. I'm worried about Ezequiel Tovar as well because he has fragile. So I've kind of created contingency plans along the way that hopefully is going to make this team work for us and keep us competitive, even if there are injuries. Because last year I didn't do that, and it burned me. We had injuries, and I didn't think I was actually able to effectively replace everyone, and it cost us in the long run. So I'm hoping to atone for those mistakes going into 2032. Here's what the lineups will look like. We will have Vance Honeycutt as a utility outfielder, pinch runner of sorts, and Alexander Albertus as the utility infielder of sorts. Versus right-handed pitching, this is what it's going to look like. Chris Baker will lead off and play center. Termarr Johnson in right. I want to talk about Termarr Johnson in right. He has gone down to a 45 infield range. I think he's better suited in a corner. This is one reason why we traded Josh Mears, was to make room for Termarr Johnson in the corner. I would ideally like him playing DH. I'd ideally like him as the DH, but we have Cuvée and Greer up next. And if he's the DH, then that means Greer has to play first and Cuvée has to play third. And that's really what I'm trying to avoid. I don't want Cuvée playing third. He's not good at third, but boy, he can hit. He hit great last year. I'd like for that to continue this year in 2032. Up next is Tovar playing second, Ethan Holiday shortstop. That's what I went with. Holiday could be a guy that might be smart to start in AAA or get some AAA time if he struggles this year. Keep in mind, we have Daniel Arana down there in AAA as well, and he's a somewhat similar profile to Holiday, so that could be an open competition at shortstop. That is definitely not an open and shut case. Mark Cox is going to play third base. I like Mark Cox. I think he has a pretty high floor. We traded for him at the trade deadline. I think he can be an everyday player in Major League Baseball. Andrew Wiggins is going to play left field versus the right-handed pitching. Pretend this is Sochi instead. Wiggins, I think, is maybe not long for this team because he doesn't even have option years available. He was so bad for us last year at the Major League level. It really cost us. Even though I think the ratings look perfectly fine, he could be a good player. Versus lefties, it's a slightly different look. By the way, Carter Jensen, catcher. And then versus the righties, Connor Wong, catcher, so that's a platoon. We're kind of punting the catcher position early on, but I'm hoping Jared Forrest reaches the big leagues fairly soon. Anyways, versus the lefties, Tamar Johnson leads off. We kind of move things around. Junior Arias enters the scene at right field as well, so he replaces basically Wiggins there in a platoon, although Arias will play right field and Tamar Johnson play left field in that scenario. And Junior Arias, you're looking at these ratings, he is a lefty killer. He has 75 power versus the lefties, according to these ratings. He looks kind of like Josh Mears-esque versus the lefties, potentially. So hopefully he can just crush lefties. That is what he has been brought in to do. Okoro, who is the guy we traded Mears for, I'm going to start in AAA and hopefully give him a little bit more time to develop his power stroke as well. And here's how our pitching will set up. We'll have Tyler Pitzer, our ace, coming off an ERA crown in the American League. Jared Jones' ratings have come down a little bit, but he had a great season for us in 2031. He's our number 2 pitcher. This is the final year of his contract, though, so that's going to be some money off the books afterwards. Brett Renfroe, who we traded for this past offseason, he becomes our number 3 starter. Got him from Miami. Cam Kennedy is our 4th starter. He has left us for a little bit. He went to Pittsburgh, and then we traded back for him, and we're glad to have him in the rotation now. And Kevin Skeet is going to open the season as your 5th starter. He developed as necessary throughout the offseason. I think he's ready to be a starter at the big league level. He'll be our number 5 starter, with Eric Segura basically serving as the SP6. Here's how the bullpen is going to set up. We're going to have Watts, Dowdy, Nowlin, and Lee in middle relief. Lee, I thought, would be in a stopper role, but his ratings have come down a bit. He's 33 years old. This is his last year before reaching free agency. He's going to be a middle reliever, while Ulloa takes over a 7th inning stopper role. And then David Rivera is going to be our stopper, akin to a setup man. Here's what he looks like. He's going to be a great reliever for us. And then his former teammate, Chris Pereira. I guess they're current teammates, but they were former Mariners. That's what I was trying to say. Chris Pereira is going to be our stopper, akin to a closer. So that's how this team is going to line up. I'm very excited. We're definitely going to be doing some mixing and matching as far as the lineup goes, but I think the pitching is pretty solid. I think the team is pretty solid, and I think we can compete.